I'm Paul Allen. I'm native of Penrith in Cumbria. I've worked at the Centre for Alternative Technology for about 33 years, doing all sorts of different work. And we've been modelling zero carbon futures since 2007. And lots of us are engineers. And basically, if you ask engineers to do anything, what they do is they first of all try to understand the problem. So we recognize climate breakdown is a wicked problem. Wicked problems were developed to describe problems that have many complex feedbacks that feed back on themselves and get worse and worse and worse if you don't act fast enough. They're deeply ingrained and entwined in a system, and there is no single solution. So the reason we see climate as a wicked problem is that there are many large amplifying feedbacks within climate systems. So ice reflects most of the sun's incoming energy. If the ice melts, the open water absorbs most of it. So the more ice melts, the warmer it gets, the more ice melts. And I'm sure you've been brought up to date with all of this. I mean, this New Year's Eve was the warmest recorded ever. But what we need to do is to stop recognizing that the stories we see on the news every week are separate. They're all interconnected through a single system, which we call the Earth. So these feedbacks make it a wicked problem. But the entwinement also makes it a wicked problem. The infrastructure we inherit between generations is designed carbon blind and uses far more energy than it needs to do. Poorly insulated houses built miles from essential services, things designed to break much earlier than necessary. So the physical world we're surrounded by is entwined in a wicked problem, but also the cultural world. It's rooted in our mindset. Humanity's been culturally lured into high carbon lifestyles, buy more, eat more, spend more, travel more, and they've been associated with success and happiness. And this also is part of the wicked problem. So what we're suggesting is that we need wicked solutions. And the sorts of wicked solutions we've been exploring feed back on themselves. They scale up, they get cheaper, they become more accessible. The more people use it, the more it becomes culturally accessible, the more it becomes affordable and competitive. It feeds back on itself. It's really exciting. And they can ingrain themselves deeper into many levels of these physical and cultural landscapes. And although there's no single wicked solution, more are appearing all the time. And I'd like to outline 5 of them briefly. The first one is an evidence-based positive vision for a zero carbon future. We launched our first report in the All-Party Parliamentary Climate Change Group back in 2007. We set out to model what a zero carbon future would be like. Then we took it to different parts of society. I've done many presentations in Cumbria over the years, found out what people want to know more about, went off and did more research, like bringing in land use, People, Plate and Planet report, hourly modeling, 2014 report, Rethinking the Future, how we overcome barriers and make it happen, 2017 report. And the most recent report is the most detailed, up-to-date vision. It's not the only way to solve the problem, but having an end point is a good conversation starter, having one possible scenario. And throughout this work, we've been exploring 2 fundamental processes: powering down the amount of energy we use to deliver society's goals and powering up 100% clean energy supply. It's not a case of bolting PVs or electric cars to business as usual, but a genuine shift from energy-intense living and refocusing on delivering society's goals in a modern, efficient way.
What's PVs, Paul?
Photovoltaic panels, sorry. Photovoltaic, solar panels. So buildings, transport, energy, and land use. So what we're not hearing enough about in the dialogues that are going on around COP and around government is actually powering down the amount of energy we use. So we modeled it in great detail. We looked at the amount of energy we used in 2017 as a baseline, 1,700 terawatt hours. That's lots and lots and lots of energy. And we looked at how it breaks down into 4 key categories of how we use it: heating and hot water, cooking, lighting, appliances, the green, the orange, the amount that industry use, and the blue, the amount we use to move ourselves and move stuff around. And we rethought the system of how we can deliver personal mobility, warm homes, healthy food on a lot less energy just by being smart to it. But at the same time, powering up a new fuel mix. So most of the 2017 energy came from oil and gas. But in fact, if we power down, we can meet that demand with about half of it comes from wind power. We're the sort of Saudi Arabia of offshore wind. If we were modeling zero carbon Egypt, it would be a very different model, be a very different mix. We looked at what's the energies that are available in the UK based around our weather and what time of year we get what to try and best match the generation from clean sources with the demand profile. But to get credibility around it, you have to do hourly modeling. You can't just look at the amount of energy. You have to be sure you can keep the lights on in the hospitals. So we actually did hourly modeling, but we used not just 1 year's weather data, but 10 years weather data, because some years are really windy and really, really mild. Other years we'd be calmed at -15. So we used lots of weather data. Then you can model how the demand for energy, mostly electricity, and the supply of electricity cross. Because it changes with the season, but it changes, demand changes with the time of day, when people come home, when they wake up, when they cook food. And you can then identify when there's peaks, when there's too much energy going into the system, and when there's not enough. And what we did was we recognized that if you begin to tweak the model, you can adjust the mix to minimize the peaks and the troughs. And dealing with the peaks is every bit as big a problem as dealing with the troughs. You can't put more energy into the grid than people are using. So we then identified ways of capturing the peaks, storing them to build a national energy store that can then be deployed during the troughs, basically creating hydrogen, upgrading the hydrogen to synthetic methane that we can use in existing combined cycle gas power stations. So basically we showed we can go from this, which is the sort of amount of emissions, which is about 540 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, where we were in 2017, 80% from energy, 9% from industry, 10% from land use. If we do the heavy lifting and power down and power up, we can go from this to this. Now we can actually increase double the forest cover, revitalize peat bogs to balance out the residual sort of 9 or 10% of what we had before and bring us to sort of balance a sum to net zero. So we've been using this to stimulate conversations and support actions and plans with councils across the UK. Second, sorry?
2 minutes left.
Yeah. Second wicked solution is just that once you cross a certain point, things get cheaper. And looking at the cost falls of solar and wind, they're cheaper than any experts predicted. Also, wicked solution, leadership is feeding back new leadership. If we look at the number of council declarations just over about a year apart, huge difference. 83% of councils have a plan. And in chapter 4.5 of the most recent report, we look at the different directions in which councils can act: downwards over what they've control over, sideways learning from others, inwards teaching and educating people, and upwards lobbying for change. Wicked solution number 4 is the things that you would need to do in Furness. There are good examples of cycling, of hydro, of retrofit that you can learn from. But perhaps the most important wicked solution, number 5, is multi-solving, maximizing the co-benefits, doing it in a way that solves lots of other problems at the same time. So it entwines the benefits across society and builds wider support. And the councils that make the case for the co-benefits as a motivator had 2.5 times more success than those who just talked about climate change. But I think the key co-benefit is unleashing a sense of collective purpose, of people doing something that they really believe in, that they feel is important, and building links between different aspects of society. If you want to know any more, we've got Zero Carbon Britain live online. We have free bursary places. We also do carbon literacy for local authorities, because if you're a health and safety officer or if you're doing data protection, you need the training. So this sort of basically carbon literacy training gives people the skills they need. We've developed a resource hub where you can search for examples of retrofit or transport from other councils across the UK. And we're running an innovation lab regularly to try and answer the difficult remaining questions. And it's all available free of charge from cat.org.uk. Thank you very much. I hope I'm roughly within time.